I think I'm going to wait for a few more people to show up. Welcome to those who have joined us. Hope everybody's having a good day.
So far.
I'll repeat this again, but if anybody wants to see some live captioning, down at the bottom, it'll say live transcript and you can enable that. We thought it might be helpful for some people to have this on. So we enabled it on this end, and we're going to be saving the chat as well. It says we have about 40 people coming today that have signed up, so we'll see what happens. I'll give it a couple more minutes and then we can begin. I hope everybody's having a good summer. I know it's been wet.
My garden has been blessed, so I'm thankful.
Oh. You know what, I think we've got about 16 participants so far, and I don't want to leave everybody hanging, so we can begin the conversation, and then hopefully people who join in, I'll be able to touch base and reiterate a few things if I need to. So,
Okay. And there's no one waiting in the waiting room?
no, they shouldn't be.
Okay. Okay, great.
Okay. I think we've captured everybody now. Okay. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about project management finances. And what I mean by that, I know there are a lot of topics that we can be covering for this. And we would like to try to keep the discussion roundtable meeting to an hour. So if there are things that we don't cover and you want some to talk a little bit about them in the future, just put it in the chat and then we'll try to set something up for a later discussion. I think one of the most important things as we're talking about project accounting is the types of software that we use, some of the processes and procedures that we use when we do accounting billing. I'm not sure how many people here are in the accounting department or handle project accounting, but it's a pretty exciting thing for me. And I am going to be sharing my screen just so I can show you the type of software that we use and just touch base really briefly over the likes and dislikes.
So before you do that, Tracy, could we just have like a show of hands who are part of the firm's financial department?
Yay.
Okay, good. All right, good. See, now you feel better. Okay, good. Now you're not talking to yourself. And notice I did not raise my hand.
No, I know. Okay. So basically the type of software that we use is called BST Enterprise. And I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see the top where it says BST Enterprise 8.7?
Yes.
Okay. So again, I don't want to, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I just wanted to show you this is the type of software that we use that is specific to architects and engineers. And this is basically how we have everything set up. So when we first sign on and I go to use the program, these are all the tabs that we have. And then basically when we go to set up a project, I just pulled up a basic template that we use. One of the things we like about this software is the fact that you can put all the different phases right here at your fingertips. So basically you have your feasibility, schematic, design development, and then what's even better is within each phase, we're able to have all our consultants here. Or if we need to set up a different phase for labor, or it's a phase that's happening within, these are like the tasks that we have within the phase. So if there's something going on in schematic design where we need to have some lead work done by either the firm or an outside consultant, we create a new task for everything that's going on within that phase, whether it's an expense or labor. So this is one of the things we really like. You can basically set up your projects however you want, but we like doing it this way. So when we have meetings, we can see everything that's going on within that particular phase on the project.
Tracy,
Yeah.
is that the Clearview and Focus product?
No, it's not actually. We used to have Infocus and Clearview.
What system is this?
This is BST Enterprise and BST Global. This is
Okay.
actually an older version. BST had just come out with version 10, but because one of the things in our discussion today is because the project managers really don't utilize this software a lot. It's basically just myself and our other accounting person who does accounts payables for the office and accounts receivable. This is something we were happy with the older version because we're the people, in addition to our controller, that utilize this program the most. And
So is it worth asking other firms what they use, just so we can have a sense of, oh, somebody's already asked that question. Oops.
yes, yeah, sure. One thing I did want to cover though, one of the last things I wanted to share with you is just to give you a sense of, and this is not our company, this is just an example that our BST person sent to us. This is what our billing looks like. And we can touch more on this once we get into billing if you'd like, but I, again, just wanted to show you, these are all the projects that have billable transactions. You see exactly what a copy of the invoice looks like, and these are all your details over here. So I'm going to stop sharing. So let's see the chat. Okay. Okay. So
Someone commented on a feedback echo. Hugh,
Yeah.
you're the only one that's not muted, so is it you? Let's see if that's better.
I've seen a lot of, some people use the Deltec Vision. Jira. So if somebody wants to talk a little bit about some of the software, for instance, Pam, maybe you want to talk about, Pam Sullivan, you want to talk about Deltec Vision a little bit and talk about what you like, don't like?
Sure. I think overall it works great in the core accounting functions. Billing is a little bit complex, but it's great once you figure out all the settings. I find that Patty can attest to this. Probably some of the project reporting in Vision is hard to understand until you've used it for a while. And Deltec does have a new software product called Vantage Point. It's probably not even that new anymore, but we are planning to upgrade and hope to utilize a lot of the new features in there. Hopefully it'll be more user-friendly for project managers.
Now, do you find that a lot of the project managers use Deltec Vision, or is it primarily accounting project?
Well, I would say over the past year and a half, more project managers have expressed interest in learning how to customize reports for themselves to see the views that they would like to see in the details. So I did a lot of remote kind of tutorials, setting up reports, but on its own, it's a challenge to, I think, have project managers get used to some of the reporting in Deltec.
I agree. So we have that similar problem with BST in that it's really hard to give them, it's either too detailed or it's not in order, or there's just way too much information that they're looking at. And really all we want to try to do is simplify things. So we continue to learn more and more about the software and how we can do that. But a lot of things that we ask for are custom. So, you know, that doesn't really work with us because, as you saw, there's so many components of the software. You know, we've been using this since 2013 and we're still learning. So I know how you feel about the reporting issue though. I don't know if anybody else has issues with their reporting on any of their software that they're using.
The one thing that Pam was generous enough not to talk about, and Laura Herbert is not on this call, but Cambridge 7 has not been very successful in training its project managers to actually input into the software, the project management. The way I mean, there are some, I know I tried it for a while, and Paul Herbert, Laura's husband, did as well, but I was quite surprised to hear that Laura's firm, and I'm not exactly sure who she works for, it was a big firm, either Smith Group or something else, where their project managers actually do the input into Vision themselves. We are not that type. We still figure out hours and man hours and fees in Excel. So I don't know how I just wanted to, you know, be that lone voice of a PM that doesn't do that. So anyway.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do too with the PMs have a lot of work to do. You know, and part of our job or my job is to try to make your job easier. So, you know, that's where having a really good software program will allow you to do. And we also utilize Excel spreadsheets. But I also don't want to do all the talking.
So actually, Hugh would like to share some of his thoughts after I made him go on mute. So Hugh, take it away.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Or I guess it's noontime now. Yeah, my background is I'm a consulting or part-time CFO and business advisor, and I work pretty much exclusively at the A&E space. So I have, I've been at this close to 20 years. I've worked with Vision in 500-person companies down to 50-person companies. I've got some solid Jira implementation and operations management experience for those clients where I'm sort of what we call the embedded consulting CFO. They both do the job. I've also got some random, that's the reason I had asked Tracy about whether that BST was actually the InFocus Clearview product, which if you're tracking that was just bought by UUnit, it has a similar look and feel. But anyway, Vision is one of the most complex pieces of software. And I also do a lot of work outside the A&E space, helping firms find financial and ERPs. Very complicated. Even consultants like Central Consulting Group, that some of you may be familiar with, they've spent a lifetime trying to figure it out. So you know, and these are just very broad brush things. You have to all do your own due diligence because every firm has unique needs and different sectors, and depending on the kinds of clients and whether you have FAR type of work and things such as that. But Vision, generally, if you're not close to 100 people, it's going to be a very difficult thing to administer and maintain and keep training because it is very complex. It is, and then now if you're already on Vision and going to go to Vantage Point, that's something I just printed out a whole list of transition issues here from a conversation yesterday. That's another 3-month investment potentially. So you got to be sure that you have a level of sophistication that any of the other products can't make before you can invest in Vision, because just the time, the people, not only the financial team, but your PMs, as people are starting to talk about, really trying to make it hands-on, because it's a shame to spend the money on these kinds of systems and have the finance and accounting people being the only people using them, other than timesheets and expense reports. So my general sense is that if you're a smaller firm, that's something that a Jira is a much more friendly, easier system to deploy and manage. And I know of 50 to 100 plus multi-location offices that are successfully using a Jira. So you just got to think about that. But my general, if someone was a client of mine and you are under 50 people and you weren't doing any particular kind of government contracting or whatnot, Vision or / Vantage Point, because I think of them as the same product now, is a big investment over time. It's because it's not only the license fees, the implementation fees, it's the maintenance, the ongoing training. And then for those of you that aren't already on one of these formal products that might be in the QuickBooks zone, don't underestimate the upfront investment to plan and implement the conversion. It is these tools are a very different world than QuickBooks. So and that doesn't mean it's bad, but you just have to, don't shortchange yourself on the implementation and training costs. And that's something back in the early part of my career as a CFO, buying financial systems. I never really understood why I'm going to spend 2 to 3 times more on services versus the software. But believe me, shortcuts in that area are not where you want to try to save your money. Well, I apologize if that was too much rambling, but I'm happy to take any questions if folks might have it. And one last thing, I'm a fan of, just in terms of my various buyers, of finding something that fits, that's all one integrated system. So you're not doing timesheets in one thing, expense reports in something else, and then trying to import them into something like a QuickBooks.
Thanks, Hugh. Does anybody have any questions to Hugh at all? Okay. Does anybody else want to share some of their experience with their software with us? No?
Yeah, I might add one thing. Our firm uses Deltek, but it's a very old version. Nowadays, you have to subscribe. The transition costs are, I think, as you was alluding to, quite a big financial and learning curve. So we've been putting it off. The likelihood that we will adopt anything other than what we've got within the next 2 years or so is non-existent. It's just easier to stick with what we know. We're a small firm, so under 30 people at most. So I don't see, it all depends on how the firm sets up the projects. So if you're tracking something, what I've found is, when I worked in larger firms and where there's 500 or 600 people, that what we would use is our process for setting up our projects, doing the project plan and breaking it down by phase and so on, was the first step in inputting data into the financial system so that we can then track by phase what was going on. So, but it was a labor-intensive activity even then.
Well, thank you, Drake. I know we saw a show of hands of some other people in the accounting field. So I'd be curious to either hear some ideas that you have about some of the things that we were going to talk about today other than software. I mean, we know, especially from an accounting standpoint, it's really important to collect timesheets in a timely manner, consultant invoices especially. And I know that we have some MSBA projects where the OPMs and the clients are asking for their invoices a lot earlier than we would typically need to get them out. So I'd be curious to see if anybody else has any, what your experience is as far as consulting invoices, timesheets, or anything of that nature that you want to contribute.
I have a question on that. When we set up our contracts, there are a lot of ways of organizing our interactions with our clients based on what's going on in the firm. So an example would be if you use the standard AIA agreements and you break down the work by phase, you may be billing your actual hours, your actual burn rate on a monthly basis. But another approach that I tried and worked with well is to set up a billing schedule where, excuse the background noise. What we would do is just set up a schedule of monthly invoices so that the owner would know month by month what the bills were going to be, and he could then plan his cash flow. And then the rest of it was internal to our firm. And that has been very successful. The client knows that he's got an agreement for a certain amount of money, and he doesn't really give a rat's, you know what, about how much money we were spending, as long as we're getting our project done, as long as we're meeting our contractual obligations. So by having that as the process, it does tend to simplify some things. One other thing is in terms of billing expenses, some people pull their hair out when they have to deal with the monthly, basically your expenses, you know, your Xeroxes, your travel expenses, and so on. So what we've done on some projects with some success is to just say to the owner, look, typically for a project of this size and duration, we would experience this much total cost for all these overhead items. What do you say we just bill you a monthly basis, a percentage of that dollar value, which we would project, and then we never send you an invoice for those expenses. It becomes an internal question that we monitor ourselves.
Well, I do know that with the MSBA contracts, they have certain limitations as to what reimbursable expenses can be. And I know when we do our budgets, when the project managers create their project budgets, they do count for printing, travel expenses within that budget. It's not something that they necessarily show the client. The only time that we would allow, for instance, allow consultants to bill for their travel and expenses is if we were able to bill the client. And going back to what you were discussing about having a budget, a schedule, we actually do, or I do, a cash flow. As soon as we gain a contract from the client and I find out from the project manager what the schedule is based on their budget, we do a cash flow. And I review that with the project manager. Obviously, they have their schedule from the client as to how each phase is going to play out. And obviously, things can change within that schedule, but we do a cash flow right at the beginning. So everybody's aware of what we're going to be invoicing out every month. And sometimes we have clients that ask for cash flow for additional services, which, as you know, can be a little bit more difficult in trying to plan out based on a schedule, because geotechnical and geoenvironmental may not come out right at the beginning. They, you know, soil testing may come at another part during the project. But again, we try to put our best foot forward and make the best assumptions that we can if we're asked. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have a question, but I thought I'd chime in. As a very small residential firm of 10 people, we're in the QuickBooks world and we bill entirely hourly. And every employee enters their timesheets in QuickBooks every week, which is certainly somewhat problematic because they forget to put the phase in, or they don't check the billable box, or they just have all kinds of typos that QuickBooks does not have a spell check in the timesheet function. But for the most part, the firm's been around for about 27 years. And we have a system of using QuickBooks in conjunction with Excel for reporting purposes in terms of what we share with the client. We bill monthly. Consultants are billed through us. So they send us their invoices and those then appear on the client's monthly invoice. And, you know, so I feel a little bit like a lot of the other people who are speaking today or have larger firms and perhaps a different billing structure in terms of fixed fees versus billable, billing hourly.
So when you were talking about your timesheet, which of course is a really important component when you're billing, does everybody basically invoice on a monthly basis, or are there different time frames that you use?
We do monthly. Yeah.
Okay. Do you typically end on the last Friday of the month, or do you draw out up until the 31st or the 30th of the month?
We do calendar months. So
Okay.
1st to 31st.
Okay. And that's probably because your time and material, it's all hourly at that point, right? So is that why? Or?
I think it's also just for consistency, and so that when we generate a monthly fee summary that's cumulative over the life of the project, so we can show, you know, by month what the billing is, as opposed to periods of time that don't directly coincide to a month. Just makes it easier to summarize the data that way.
So just so
I see folks that do a whole variety of things, particularly on larger projects. They'll do milestone completion. So if you complete a phase and it's the 5th or the 10th of the month, you don't want to wait 30 days to get the bill out. I think often, particularly in the past year, clients, I think someone mentioned that, clients might be asking for bills faster. So I think you can, I have an expression I use in the right context, you know, bill early, bill often, you know. I think that to the extent that it works with your clients, and someone asked a question earlier about consultants, what I suggest is try to work out when you're doing your proposal work and accepting proposals with consultants, to tell them they need to get their bill to you by the 25th of the month. That way you can bill it out, and if you're doing end of the month, because one of the things I see happen in firms, if you're not organized about this, if you're not getting your billing out till the 25th to the 30th of the month after, you're already 30 days behind understanding how you did. So I think to think about your processes and try to come up with something where you can get all your billing done by the 10th to the 15th of the month. I think that firms that do that have less cash flow problems, and you just get your team focused on it. I think, I don't know what your first name is, but the last person that spoke about the weekly timesheets, that's great. I mean, the biggest problem with is trying to get people, and sometimes it's the senior members of the firm, to get their time done, you know, to have it done. When I was an advisor to a very large firm a while back, had 18 offices. On end of the day Monday, a utilization report was done, and if your office or your group wasn't on it, your utilization was reported as 0. So you're doing things like that to get people's attention. And there's research that's been done, some of which I did a similar thing in the advertising agency space as well many years ago. Firms that don't enforce weekly timesheet preparation, timesheet submission, are losing 10 to 15% of net revenue, because 10 days later, people don't remember what phase it was. They don't remember what they did. And it's particularly important because I think, as you all would agree, scope creep is probably the #1 profit killer. And if the team isn't educated on what scope is, and when they're doing their time, that, you know, I think these systems, many of them, when someone does their time, there's a tool like a timesheet note where they can put in what they were working on. And I find that when you're reviewing billing, reviewing these timesheet notes is the best window into when there's a potential additional service situation.
Yeah, we actually we have a daily timesheet entry requirement. People are supposed to enter their time before they leave the office at the end of the day.
Good for you.
And then
That's
on
great.
Fridays, they're required to proofread their timesheet. And then a report is sent to all the project managers, for all the projects weekly, so that they then review and can spot things. So we are doing this over the course of the month, so that by the time invoice, generation rolls around, that's been looked at enough times that we don't have as many edits to the invoices, and then they can get out, more quickly. And as you pointed out, we do have a schedule for consultant invoices. We also have a markup fee on all consultants. So, and if clients pay within 7 days, that markup fee is discounted. So we have very quick turnaround between the time we get the invoices out and clients pay, because they want to have that discount.
I was going to ask Meredith, most of our projects are fixed fee, but we do a few on an hourly basis. And what we find is, obviously, we send back up, but clients are always like, oh, how did you spend that much time, right? Even if we've given stated ranges. So in a practice that's running all on the hourly basis, are you giving estimates to clients at the outset?
Well, what we do is, because we're not on a fixed fee basis, once we have an estimated construction cost, we on our monthly fee summary, we sort of take our average based on the type of project it is, end percentage that will be fees, which will be from usually 15 to 18%, depending on the project. So we have something built from the outset of the project that gives them a sense by phase of what the billing totals are going to be. And then internally, there's a column in that spreadsheet that tells our staff, this is how many hours you have left in this phase and that phase. And so we're tracking that all along. Obviously, project creep and other factors, the budget, the construction cost goes up, then there's a corresponding. But I would add this one thing that surprised me, because I've only actually been doing the bookkeeping here, although I've worked at the firm for 7 years, but I've only started this year doing bookkeeping, is how few questions we get from clients. I mean, we have every employee, every day, every hour is entered and recorded. And we just never get questions like, well, that seemed to take a long time, or what is this, new clients, long-term clients. That's been a surprise to me. It's just how, and I think part of the reason is because we have built that trust, and we do a lot of things. This is maybe an unusual way of doing it, but we do something where if someone's taken a long time to do a task that should have taken them less time, and we don't feel it's fair to bill the client for that, we do put the time on the invoice, but it's entered and it says not billed. So they can see, oh, additional time doing this task, 0 on the billing rate. So for whatever reason, maybe we just get lucky with our clients. We have very little pushback on invoices, and people pay right away, which is great.
Just one final question. Sorry, sorry to put you on the spot. Are you saying you end up being about 15 to 18% of the construction cost as kind of an average? Okay.
Yes.
So you're using that both to communicate with the client at the outset that that's your range, but then you're also using that for your kind of internal cash flow projections, staffing.
Exactly. So that we are keeping that picture as we go.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that has any questions for either one of us, or would like to talk a little bit more about their organization? I did
can
want
say
to say
something.
thank you very much. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm from Traverse Landscape Architects. We're a smaller firm, and we use Monograph. We've been using it for 2 years, and it does some things really, really well, and needs to continue to improve on others. But it has an interesting tool for your Monday morning, scheduling meeting. for each project, if you have the project set up properly with your team and who is assigned to it, it will tell you kind of how many hours for that week, and you can go out several weeks and it tells you how many hours they should be working on it. And you can adjust as you're talking through, like who needs to work on what project. So that's been kind of an interesting new feature over the last 6 months that we've been using to organize our staff and who's going to be working on what project. And as far as invoicing, to do the invoices has been very helpful, because you can just see like how much time, when you go to invoice that project, you can just see the exact time or spent on the project in accordance with your fee that you have, and whether or not that's your over or below. So that's made invoicing much easier. Again, teaching the staff, the project managers, how to use it outside of the accounting part of it has been, they're more the designers and like that end of it. So we continue to work towards that. But for our smaller firm, it's been a great addition.
Hi, Mary. How many people are in your firm?
We're 11.
My name's Sujan. I work with Kyle at Merge Architects. I guess I was curious about that because we're somewhere in the middle, like 20, 25 people, where I feel like, we haven't really paid attention much to the project management aspect. We do everything in QuickBooks, so we're trying to bridge that gap. I think I heard earlier, Hugh, that you said like something like the other vision and such are just not appropriate for something smaller than 100 people. But the note about having an integrated solution seems to be also your message. So I guess I'm just wondering, for a team of like 20, 25, what's the best kind of, and maybe pulling it with everyone's suggestions here, but what would be the best sort of solution at this point? Because I think I think we're graduating to something else, but I just don't know what's the best way to do that. And I don't know if there is an integrated solution at that small scale.
I can chime in a little bit about that. My name's Shelley. I'm calling in from Rhodey Architects. We are like 29 people, so kind of right where you guys are. We use a combination of two things. We're using QuickBooks Online, but we're also using something called Big Time. And Big Time is geared for professional services and architects, so we can create projects in it and create tasks and phases. So when people are billing their time, they can only bill their time to the tasks that are to the phases that are open. So it's already set up for them to pick the right things. And then we end up meeting with our project managers twice a month to go through their allocations, to make sure that their allocated hours are still on track with like what people have entered into their timesheet. And then we meet with them again close to invoicing time. And Hugh, to your point, like we're really trying to like decrease our invoicing from like a 20-day cycle to like a 10-day cycle to get those invoices out. And so that's why this mid-month review with our project managers has really become like an integral part, because we're trying to identify problems at that time. And using Big Time, you can invoice directly through it, but we don't, because we've always used QuickBooks to do that. And there's some limitations with Big Time as well in reference to consultant invoicing and things along those lines. So we've just happened to stick with doing the two systems. But I've always been down on their reporting functionality, but hearing everyone else say that they have a tough time with their reporting kind of makes me feel a little better. That it's not just like what I'm using, because I do feel like we're missing out on some like magical project management tool that everyone's using, and we're missing out because we're like a 30-person organization. But it's really been a combination of finding the right tools and even using some Excel as well to create some project health reports and try to help people understand like what their multiplier is and how well they're doing based on the fee that's has been projected for the particular project. Some of our projects are fixed fee, some of them are time and materials.
Shelley, if I may, how many people on your team are doing that project management work that are not like admin and finance folks that aren't involved in the delivery of client services? It sounds like what you described is a wonderful process. I'm just curious as to how much people power you need to keep that up on an ongoing basis.
So I head up the operations side of Roadie, and then we have a accounting manager, and then we just hired on a part-time CFO a couple of months ago. And then we probably have maybe 40, 50 active projects. And so we sit with maybe 8 project managers. Those are the ones that are maybe less than that, maybe 6 project managers that are managing all of the projects, and we run through their projects. And so I need to say, like, the first couple of months, it was a little, it was a learning process, and we did that, but now it's a little bit well-oiled machine. So we do not have, of the 30 people, if I count the 2 principals, we have 5 people in operations, our marketing manager, myself, that's it. And then everyone else is on the design side of the house.
Okay, thank you. But as you said, the discipline is really the challenge of being able to stick to all that
Right.
month in and month out. So that's wonderful that you can.
If I have $1 for every time I say do your timesheet, I would be retired, living someplace in it's just really, and then I'm just do your timesheet. Then I get mad. It's not good.
So with based on the description, is Big Time and Monograph, I guess, similar platforms, software?
We looked at Monograph too, actually, and Marie, to your point in reference to that graph where you could see where you were going to run out of fee based on how much, was really interesting. I think there was some other components of it that we needed that it didn't have as we were kind of going through some of our evaluations. But yeah, if you could speak more to it, it was something that we looked at as well. That would be great.
I would just throw out there, at the risk of sounding like I'm self-promoting, but for those of you that are in that below 30, even below 50 space, a Jira is a good fit. So I recommend you take a look at that if you're looking to make a change.
So that's a good point, Hugh. So how many people I know we have a small group today, and I know there are some people that are under 30. Is there anybody that falls within the 50 to 100 category, or and what about over 100? Okay, so it sounds like the group is pretty much within that 50 to 100 range, if I'm correct, or under 30. So it may be that there are some software programs that work better for smaller companies than, as you mentioned here, some of the larger companies that have a lot more information to gather and a lot more complex reporting issues and things like that they have to take care of. But I think that everybody really has some really great information. And I don't know if there's anybody else in the group that hasn't talked yet that would like to give some information on their experiences. That would really be great.
I just actually have a question. So what's the difference between a Jira and Vision?
They're 2 different products. What gets confusing is they're both owned by Deltek. So that's why when someone says we use Deltek, I have, the question is which product? And back 10 plus years ago, when I first started helping clients with the Jira, one of the first things I would tell people is, well, one of the good things about it is it's not Deltek. Because if you're familiar with Deltek and you're from Boston, and I say Harper and Schumann, people might know what I'm talking about. So Deltek has a history of buying up all these competitive products, and eventually the competitive product goes away. So but I will say in the close to 5 years, I think it might be, that Deltek has from when Deltek bought a Jira, they've done a pretty good job of letting a Jira stay a Jira. And in my opinion, the Jira's technical support is amongst the best I've seen in any business software application. And so the difference is that a Jira is much more graphically oriented dashboards. I think part of the reason that Deltek came up with Vantage Point was taking some of the interfaces that a Jira had and trying to bring it into that more sophisticated area. So I think it's more intuitive. It's more, it looks more like you would like software you want to use every day. Whereas, Vision is more of a go to the table, put it in, run a bunch of reports or batch it. It's more of an old type, even though Vision is real time, a Jira is more real time in the sense of if someone puts a timesheet in and then I go look at the snapshot report of that project, that time is there live. Whereas in Vision, you've got to go in, you've got the 2 bands of columns, you got to set your options, you got to set your filter, you then have to go preview the product, you got to wait for it to come up. And then if you want to put it into a PDF or Excel, that's it's a lot less clicking, Patty. That might be the easiest answer to your question, but but when you saw them, you can see, that your familiarity with it, your eye will tell you almost right away what it looks like. It's just as through some other work I do, I'm very familiar with QuickBooks Financial. I can tell from a financial report in 30 seconds whether it came from QuickBooks or not. So it's
Good, thank you. That's very helpful. So before the pandemic, we had weekly timesheets, but our CFO, who doesn't come in every day, used to like to wander the office. And then he could tell what people were doing. And so unable to do that, he insisted on daily timesheets. So this is how he sees what everybody's doing during the course of the day.
Is that working successfully?
It is actually. Pam, I don't know, you can tell, but I do think, and then we have the timesheet police that send out emails.
Right.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, throughout most of the pandemic, our president was sending out daily emails to just check in with everyone in the office. And at the end of each one, he would remind everyone to do their timesheet that day. And I think that helped a lot. And now people are more in the habit of just saving their hours daily. So then they submit a weekly timesheet still, but it's great to have the hours in there most days.
Yeah, that's his walk around the office now.
I,
He eats lunch, he looks at the timesheets. What's better in life?
Now, I have to say that we're pretty successful in getting the timesheets. I basically post them all at the end of the month, and we typically utilize the last full week of the month to post all the timesheets, because the way our software works, if you try to do it midweek, it won't accept them, because it's actually seeing that last full week of the month is typically that's the week ending period. So a lot of our invoices and everything that we put in, we have to do it for that week period end date. But I have to say that when he was talking about making sure that the invoices go out in a timely manner, we do have we have to have everything posted, all the invoices out by the 15th of the month. I mean, that is our deadline. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of our MSBA clients are asking for them specifically the first week of the month, because their meetings are the second week of the month. So they need to have everything in their hands in order to make sure that they have our invoices and they can present them when it comes time for their meeting. So a lot of my time is making sure that the consultants have their invoices in on time. And it can be difficult for the hourly consultants, because they have to wait until the end of the month. So I do send out reminders around the 25th of the month to make sure that everybody knows, hey, we got to get them in on time. And then that first week of the month, I am pedal to the metal, posting, getting everything entered and getting the billing set up. We meet with the project managers once a month, and all the meetings are set up typically for the second week or the first week, depending on how the month goes. If it's a 5-week, then I have a little bit of extra time. But at the meetings, we review all the consultant invoices. We look at the draft. If it's a fixed fee, we go and utilize we actually go with the schedule and the cash flow to see what percentage we should be at. And obviously at some of the meetings, it could be, where we're not quite there yet. So we do a lower percentage. But we cover a lot of information during the meetings. And at one point, I know that they were becoming a lot more than just billing meetings because, you were able to get a lot of information as to how the project was running. And I learned a lot during that time period. So, I think it became important for the project managers to understand that it's great for people in accounting and accounting finances and project finances to learn about the background of the project and how things are going, the DLBMs and all that. We actually have a controller that manages all the really major reports for the projects and for the firm. But I found it very helpful to learn a lot more about the projects other than I'm invoicing 78% for July services. So I have a question. Has anybody become, one of the things that I've become more involved in, which I really enjoy also, is becoming a lot more, not friendly, but I communicate more with the consultants now than I used to. Again, when you're looking at, I also manage and help with the proposals and the contracts for the consultants. And I'm not sure if there's anybody that does that, but I enjoy reading the proposals to see what the scope of services are. It also allows me to check the math on the proposals to make sure that they're correct before a contract goes out. Also to make sure that what they're saying in the proposal, whether it's a lump sum or time and materials, it goes with what we're sending to the client. And we also have to make sure that if they're reimbursing things that shouldn't be reimbursed, we have to touch base on that. So I've also found that I've developed a really good relationship over the years with consultants, and I've been with the company now 11 years. So I'm curious to see if that's happened with others. Have you found that with your project financing, are you developing better relationships with some of companies like the consultants or the OPMs or anything outside of the organization? No?
I'll chime in. I mean, we're a very small firm, and we typically use the same engineers and landscape architect. And so we have long established relations. And so as the rhythm of that supports getting, the invoices in a timely manner. And I'm not involved with the project, with the consultants' project proposals. The project managers manage all that. But I wanted to ask a question of others to see. We have a pretty multi-step process for getting people's eyes on the billing before it actually goes to the client. And I'm curious to know how that compares to others. As I previously mentioned, people are entering their time daily, they're proofreading on Fridays. The project managers get a weekly report of time that's been spent on the project. And then at the end of the month, they get a month-end report before I generate the invoices. Then once the invoice is generated, it goes to the project manager who reviews it, makes any last, oh, no, we're not, that, whatever, comes back to me. I then give it with those markups to the principal. It's just, there's one principal owner of the firm who then further marks it up or approves whatever the project manager has done, comes back to me, then it, finally gets edited and goes out the door. So it is, there's a lot of iterations of, and I just am curious, are your project managers or other staff outside of the accounting involved in approving the invoicing?
Yeah, I know we're about 60 people, but when we have our billing meetings every month, we have basically the project director, who's usually a principal. We have the project manager. We have the controller, and then we have myself. And typically we may have another member on the team. And that way we do that so everybody can see what's being reviewed. They can talk about how the project is going, whether or not we're still on schedule, if we're going to meet that schedule. They discuss where the consultants are at that point. And everybody's able to look at the review, the invoice, because it could be that the project director or the project manager is looking at the consultant invoices, but somebody from the actual team is dealing with the consultants directly. So they would have more say in saying, yeah, this consultant really is at about 78%, or no, they haven't turned their report in. So they've only got about 50% done. So by having everybody there available, it's just a one-shot deal.
Yeah, and we have billing meetings. I think it's sort of a two-step process, and Pam actually goes through and weekly sends out the staffing reports or the project management reports to the project managers for their various teams to check the hours and to make sure things are coded to the right place. She does that weekly. I don't know how I try and respond to her once a month, but I don't know how often you actually expect a response, Pam. Like never. But then we sit down, Pam sits down with the project manager and our CFO, and we go through all of the invoicing, all of the bills that have come in for that particular job. The project manager approves them or doesn't approve them. And then after that, since the CFO is sitting there, the bills are generated and out they go. Did I miss anything, Pam? All the behind the scenes stuff that you do to make sure they're right in the first place.
Yeah, I feel like I must have a lot of trust from everyone, because no one really looks at the actual invoice after that billing meeting, and they mark up the % complete or approve the hours. And then I generate it, and I'm the one who emails it off to the clients. So it seems to work.
Yeah.
Especially now with COVID, when everything started happening via Zoom meetings, I was doing what you do, Pam, is that I started compiling everything ahead of time so that I would email the draft of the invoice, all the hours, all the consultants, and just ask them to review it in the event, A, they couldn't make it to the meeting, or B, there was something that just didn't sit right, or just to have them look at it ahead of time since they were able to. And that's also cut our billing meeting time down from, an hour to a half hour. So it really has saved a lot of time to be able to do that.
Can I ask a quick question? I know it's 1 o'clock. Do your principals fill out the timesheets?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Our principal doesn't do it herself, but she has a planner that she's been using for literally 25 years. And so she handwrites it, and then our administrative assistant enters it for her. Everybody else does it, but our principal does not. She still draws by hand. We're a Revit office, but she's very paper in hand.
Yeah. Thank you.
I know we could talk about timesheets and trying to get everybody to have them in on time. And I know that it's just a little after 1. And I know we've covered a lot of information, and it has been really helpful listening to everybody today. I don't know if there's anything else that you specifically would like to talk about or hear about in the future as far as project finances, but if so, please feel free to enter the topic into the chat. I did save the chat and I'll be happy to send that out to anybody. And in addition, the video from the last roundtable discussion was put up on the BSA website. So if anybody's interested, please feel free to check out that the website and check out the video. I'm also happy to send it out to the BSA Roundtable group. If you're new, I've been collecting emails and I send out reminders. We have a specific little BSA Project Management Roundtable email group that I send things out to. So if you'd like to be a part of that, please feel free to put your email address in the chat room. So if nobody has any other questions or information, again, I want to thank everybody and I hope everyone has a really great afternoon.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye.